Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Folks, it is an honor to welcome Joe Lunardi to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, ESPN bracketologist, fantastic guy, 24/7, never gets tired here. Follow him on Twitter at ESPN Lunardi. Joe Lunardi is joining us today on the Screen the Screener Podcast. My friend, it's an honor to have you here. It is officially March.
Thank goodness for that, right, Mike? And everything you said was true just then except one thing, and that is I really do get tired. And people will say to me, well, you know, what's different about it now than 20 years ago? And I'll say, well, 20 years ago I didn't get as tired. But, you know, I suppose that better to be at an age where you get tired than, especially under the circumstances, not reach that age. So I'm thankful to be doing it and happy to chat with you. And yes, it is March. Thank goodness we made it.
We made it. You got your coffee there. I have mine. And listen, you also have an incredible book coming out tomorrow, I believe, entitled Bracketology, March Madness, College Basketball, and the Creation of a National Obsession. We'll get into that in a little bit. I can't wait. I already ordered mine. It's fantastic. But we're going to start, Joe, with what you can tell us every answer. You have the answers to every single question right now. And my first one to you, my friend, we know it's Gonzaga. We know it's Baylor, despite the loss to Kansas. And we certainly know it's Michigan. Tell us, Joe Lunardi, who's going to be that fourth number one seed?
It's almost certainly going to be a Big Ten team. Which one, I'm not yet certain, because they're going to decide it the best way they should, which is on the court. Right now, Ohio State and Illinois are kind of neck and neck, but they do close the regular season against one another, which is in bracketology shorthand, Mike, very handy scheduling.
Yeah, for sure.
But in the meantime, you know, Illinois is also going to play Michigan this week. So, you know, there could be, what would we say? There's going to be more than one lead change in this game before it goes final.
You know, I was curious, Joe. The bracket preview comes out a couple weeks ago. One of the favorite parts of the year for me. I just wanted to talk about Houston. You know, they're a tricky team to seed here. I was sort of surprised they received a 2 seed in that show. They were coming off a 9-point loss at East Carolina. Then after the preview, they lost to Wichita State. Strength of schedule is 60, but they're only 2-1 versus Quadrant 1. How tenuous is that spot, and what do you think about the Houston Cougars here?
I have them as a 3 now. The back-to-back losses dropped them, and they've been living in that 3 world for, I guess, a couple of weeks now. And I think they'll probably stay there. The group of 2s just have more opportunities here to really bang out high-end wins. And Houston, you know, which is separated from the American contenders, the other ones, in fact, has done it so widely that the others really don't have a very good shot. So they'll stay where they are, I think. And, you know, my basketball evaluation of them is I think they can absolutely be a second weekend and even an Elite Eight team. I think that there will come a point in the tournament where, you know, they play a team that's just more offensively skilled and the kind of grind it out defense, crash the boards way. And they're exceptional in those areas. And Kelvin Sampson is to be credited for that. Like, at some point, it's still a game of skill, and they might have to get 75 or 80 against a good team, and I don't know that they'll be able to do that.
Houston has that style, Joe, that's just different than everyone else. And I remember they played them against Michigan in the tournament, and that was the year Michigan went to the finals. Of course, the big shot there at the end put Michigan over, but they have a style, right, that's different from some of these top teams.
No question about it. And although it's not the same style, what I'm reminded of is Temple and John Chaney. he like they played a matchup zone, and they were all about preventing turnovers more than they were crashing the glass. But because it was a defensively oriented style and a slower pace, it effectively keeps both teams in the game at the same time, right? You're a math guy. The fewer the possessions, the better it is for the lesser skilled team, right? That's why in a big football game, the underdog tries to run the ball,
yep,
right? Because,
yep,
we want to keep Tom Brady off the field or whatever the case may be. And I used to work with someone really closely, a coach, who would often say to me, after I'd spat off about one thing or another, he'd go, Joe, it's really just math. And and that is the case, I think, with Houston's chances. And the coach, ironically, was Phil Martelli, who I don't know that he ever got better than a C in math, but I digress.
Yeah, and he certainly had an incredible career at St. Joe's, and he's certainly doing magical things in Michigan right now. Absolutely. Let's take a look at some of the blue bloods here that are on the bubble. Last time that UNC, Duke, and Kentucky all did not make the NCAA tournament, 1974. That's 47 years ago. So I want to go through each one of these major teams here real quick. Give me your thoughts. Let's start with Duke. 11-9 overall, 9-7 in the ACC. Only 1-3 in Quadrant 1 wins. And the only big win they had, Joe, was over Virginia. Where are those Blue Devils right now for you?
In trouble with their backs against the wall. That was a game I did not expect them to drop at home. Louisville, they're guaranteed 3 more games. They're at Georgia Tech, huge. They're at Carolina, huger, if that's a word. And their first ACC tournament game. And I think they need to win all 3. And if they do, they'll be able to kind of backdoor their way in. If they drop one of those regular season games, that just adds to what they need to do in the postseason tournament.
Well, you mentioned them there. Their big rival, the Tar Heels, frenetic team in Chapel Hill, 15-8 overall, 9-5 in conference. They're 42nd in the net, 2-6 against Quadrant 1 wins, but had that huge comeback there against Florida State. Big boost for Roy Williams, 900th career victory. What do you think about the Tar Heels here? Are they a little bit above Duke, I would think?
Yeah, Carolina's going to make it. That win pretty much did it for them, and they needed it because a little bit of a miscue there earlier last week in scheduling Marquette, and then kind of laying an egg at home in a quad 3 game. That definitely put a little bit of a halt to their momentum. And I had a question when I saw that game come up. In fairness, as you say, between us, Roy Williams and I have 900 wins, and he has, all of them, every last one of them, in fact. But yeah, usually the best thing to do when you have a bad or semi-bad loss is to have a good win. Well, they got a great win. So all's right in Chapel Hill.
And then what about Kentucky? Really fascinating. I think the biggest question mark of the elite programs, 8-14 overall, 7-8 in the SEC. I think they got to obviously make a run here in the SEC to even have a discussion. They started to make some noise, Joe. They had 3 wins in a row at Tennessee. Then that was a crippling loss, I think, to Florida over the weekend. I think they have to win the SEC, right?
Yeah, their at-large chances are done. I know there's some people who maybe feel a little bit differently, and you can talk all you want about strength of schedule and the pandemic and its impact, and all of that is valid. And last thing I want to do is be accused of minimizing the pandemic. But I mean, like, we keep score for a reason, right? And 8-14 is 8-14. Like, if they were playing in the NBA Pacific Division and they were 8-14, I don't think I would think that they belonged in the tournament as an at-large.
And then the last one, Michigan State.
Oof.
Yeah, that's the one here. That's the big question. Tom Izzo doing Tom Izzo-like things. We entered March. They had 3 in a row, beat Indiana, beat Illinois, beat Ohio State. 4-8 versus Quadrant 1, But those are 4 Quadrant 1 wins, Joe. Spartans, how do you project them here for the tournament?
Yeah, and they, of course, took on a Quad 1 loss Sunday against Maryland, which drops them to 7-10 in the league. I thought heading into that game that if Michigan State was able to win on the road at Maryland, that they would make the tournament. Because I'm assuming, or presuming maybe is the better word, that they will beat Indiana at home this week, because Indiana to me looks, if not toast, they're sticking out of the toaster with some smoke. So at 12-12. So Michigan State's going to beat Indiana. Beating Maryland would have guaranteed them no worse than 9-11 in the Big Ten, with their last 2 games coming home and away against Michigan, which, they're probably not going to be favored in either game, although they could certainly steal one. And if they do, then they're in, right? Beating a number 1 seed, but another number 1 seed. But not just losing at Maryland, but, they were out of gas yesterday. And I still think they need 2 more wins. So say Indiana, right? Either one of the Michigans or like a non-Nebraska in the Big Ten tournament.
We talk, Joe, about the Blue Bloods, but obviously those mid-majors, those low-round upsets make the tournament in the opening rounds. The old adage I hear from the public is they want the big-time programs in the Final Four, but they want to see the upsets early. So I want to grab your thoughts on a couple of the small schools here that have had exceptional seasons, but maybe sort of question marks as we hit March. I want to start with Drake. Now, Drake was super hot early in the year. They were great against the spread also. They were just dominating. But, of course, now the season-ending injury to point guard Roman Penn. Shaquan Hemphill also injured. Drake is really battling here. And they're a team that, if you look at totality, 22-3 overall. They certainly were a team that should be in. But now, with the injuries, how do you analyze Drake? How are they looking for the tournament? Do they have to win the conference tournament to get in?
I don't think they have to win it, but they have to lose it to Loyola. I'm not sure they can take another loss against a non-tournament team, because then you kind of evaluate their run of games without Penn, without Hemphill. Of course, now they got I'm drawing a blank here. The guy who just had 30 back-to-back.
Yeah, Joseph Yusufu. He's been incredible. Yusufu has been incredible.
I mean, who loses their best player and then finds another guy to do that? Which, of course, leads me to think, well, maybe he's their best player. That's not the point, though. They have to stabilize here, and I have them right on the edge between just above last 4 in. So they're in, but one more bad loss, if it's in the early round in St. Louis at the Valley Tournament, I think as much as I'm a mid-major guy, I think you could make a credible argument at that point that they would have played their way out.
One of the conferences that's getting a lot of publicity in the past has not done well in the tournament is the Mountain West. You look at a team like Utah State, 15-7 overall, 2-4 against Quadrant 1, got a big win last night against Nevada at home, and they have beaten San Diego State twice. What do you think here about the Utah State if they were not to win the conference tournament and get upset, let's say, in the semifinals?
Yeah, I think from a profile standpoint, metrics and otherwise, at this moment, they're the weakest of the 4 Mountain West contenders. The others being San Diego State, you mentioned, along with Boise and Colorado State.
I love Colorado State, Joe. Love them.
That doesn't mean that they're not worthy. It just means I rank them 4th in that group and among the first 4 out. Now, this is probably going to work itself out because we are going to get quasi-elimination games if the bracket holds in the Mountain West tournament. And spoiler alert, there's a one of the annual exercises of joy at ESPN.com is before Champ Week, we have to all, go public with our conference tournament picks. And I actually picked Utah State to win that tournament because I did last year, and it worked out pretty well, even though they were up against a possible number one seed in the final in San Diego State. So, look, they probably have the best player in the league. And when I can't decide between two teams, I usually think, all right, one and done, who has the best player in the game? Who's going to have the ball when it's, 70-70 with a minute to go?
That's a great way to look at it.
It never works, but, I try.
Well, it worked with Utah State. I mean, sometimes it does work. It depends on how you look at it. How do you factor in when you're doing your brackets, and you're headed right now to the bunker, of course, how do you factor in injuries? Bones Highland for VCU, Jordan Bruner, who was out for a while, now back for Alabama, Book Knight for UConn. How does that factor into your seeding and your bracketology?
Every case is a little bit different. And I think on balance, every case is a little bit overemphasized. I think history would suggest that for all the talk about injuries and player availability, it's less of a factor in the end result than we all think. There are obviously major exceptions to that over the years. The classic example being Cincinnati's Kenyon Martin in the year 2000 or 99, I forget. Where we weren't just talking about an injury. We were talking about the number one player in the country on the number one team in the country that was going to be the number one overall seed in the tournament, breaking his leg in the conference quarterfinal. So, there was no way to get a look at Cincinnati after that and evaluate them with any observation. So they basically took a wild guess, dropped them 2-2, and kind of went on with their bracketing business. But anybody who was in the room at the time would tell you, and I've spoken to a few of them over the years, they were just trying to make lemonade out of lemons at that point. Now, in these cases, they're all. Bones is supposed to be back for the A10 tournament. I suspect that he will be. He was hopping around pretty good there on the bench with in their last couple games, a win and a loss. And talking to some VCU people and some A10 people, I think that they're optimistic. So, they're going to be evaluated on their resume, period. They lost one game with him, won one game with him, and they might have gone 1-1 in those games anyway. Like you can over kind of like a player absence doesn't guarantee a loss, nor does a player return guarantee a win. Like Book Knight came back and they went 1-1, UConn in their first two games. I remember the year, Bonzie Colson missed the last 6 weeks for Notre Dame.
Yep.
And came back in the ACC tournament. They looked great. They had great wins with them early in the year, and they were still team number 69. And that happened to be, a team that I missed that year, maybe by overplaying the injury card. Who knows? Different people in the room, different year. The vote could always come out another way. But I think the impact in those three specific cases you mentioned will be, I don't want to say negligible, but I also don't think there'll be a large impact.
Well, Joe, you've timed it right with your book coming out here. Bracketology, March Madness, College Basketball, and the Creation of a National Obsession. It drops tomorrow, March 2nd. I mean, I got a preview of it. You were kind enough to send one to me. This is incredible stuff. All college basketball fans have to read this book. So many great parts about it, Joe. And you went into how in the book, how it came about. What I love, one of my favorite parts is the Debunking the Myth section, where you really get into exactly, what's true, what's false, what matters, because there is a disconnect here. Talk about that a little bit. It's a great book, and there's so many great parts to it.
Well, I really appreciate the kind words, and when we were doing it in the spring and summer, our fingers were crossed the whole time, because the plan actually was, if we got to around late January, early February, and it looked like there wasn't going to be a tournament, we weren't going to put it out. We were just going to wait a year and then update it. And I'm really glad, for a lot of reasons, that it's out. Because it's, like you say, it's a good read, I think. I always told people I wouldn't expect them to buy a book about me. I'm not sure I would read a book about me, but it really is about the tournament and its evolution and everything behind it. And some of them, like, I'll give you a classic example that plays into it this year. Like, everyone says, if it's Duke on the bubble or Michigan State against, Drake or Colorado State, that the blue blood is going to get picked because,
Yep.
it sells tickets or it's TV ratings or what have you. Well, number one, the TV money is the same, and it's negotiated like 14 years in advance. Number two, we're not selling any tickets this year, and even in the years that we are selling tickets, they're pretty much all sold no matter who's in the field, right? So, does Duke making the Final Four generate eyeballs at that point for TV? Yeah, I guess, but like, if there's a Final Four game between, I don't know, Michigan and Baylor or Baylor and Gonzaga, you mean to tell me that it's not going to get a good rating? Like, I just don't see it that way. And I think for everyone who says that, they're going to bend over backward to get Duke in or Kentucky in, this might shock some people, but there are also a lot of people out there that don't like Duke and Kentucky, because I hear from them too. And, the Blue Bloods have, like, love-hate relationships with fandom. And I just don't think it matters. Is there a human element where maybe there's a little bit of an extra bit of attention? Yes, but, like, you either have the resume or you don't. And, like, if they backdoor a blue blood in ahead of somebody who's really deserving, like, they know they're going to get crushed. And these people, while they may be human when they vote, they're also human when they get criticized. And, as somebody who's kind of in that world for the next couple of weeks, given the choice between someone saying something nice about you and not saying something nice about you, most people, choose the obvious. And I'm not really worried about that. Call me crazy, call me naive. I've been called a lot worse, but when I see evidence, and if they need to be called out because there's evidence, you can be sure I'll do it. But I'm not going to speculate when there isn't evidence.
No, you certainly will, and it was such an honest look, Joe. You get into the Archie Miller thing from last year. I mean, it was incredible. You have inside anecdotes, some of the biggest personalities, players, and coaches. I mean, Joe, you got Mark Few doing the forward for you. He's doing the forward for you, so you got to be doing something right here.
Yeah, how about that for good fortune? We made that decision in August, September-ish. And, look, we knew they would be good. But, Feely was one of the first coaches to call me years ago and say, can you help us with scheduling, before they were, became the New York Yankees. So we've maintained a friendship, and he's as good a guy in person as he comes across on the air. And, yeah, of course, we knew when we decided to do the book that this would be the year they'd go undefeated and be the number one seed. That was great work by me.
Of course. That's what goes on in the bunker. Joey Brackets, we would expect nothing less. Folks, Joe Lunardi, he's in the middle of multiple calls and interviews here. Book comes out tomorrow, March 2nd. Bracketology, March Madness, college basketball, and the creation of a national obsession. Follow him on Twitter at ESPN Lunardi. Joe, it is a pleasure, my friend, here. It's always better in March. Life is always better in March. And after last year, we needed this more than ever. And there's no better way to kick it off than talking with you here about March Madness. Thanks so much for a few minutes.
You bet, Mike. Thank you.